Yeah.
So the idea of bonsai is to get the tree to look like a fully grown tree but in a pot. So everything kind of shrinks down, the roots will shrink down, the leaves will shrink down. Obviously your trunk is pretty much controlled.
Yeah. You have a number of bonsais around, so obviously bonsai is also quite close to your heart.
Yes.
What is it about bonsai that kind of got you hooked on it?
I think it's designing it. So I'm actually an artist as well. I paint.
Okay.
And I've been an artist since I was young, very artistic in my play and everything. So when my mom and my sister started doing bonsai classes, and I saw the kind of work that they were doing, it seemed a place where an artistic flow can kind of So that's actually one of the reasons why I got into bonsai, because you could create so many different looks. You can mimic so many trees, and just getting to that final piece is. Although they say that you can never have a final bonsai.
I was about to say, because essentially it is a living canvas in that regard,
yes,
though,
exactly.
isn't it?
So it will be a constant, creative flow. You'll be changing it. You can grow it differently. You can trim it differently. So this one obviously is in need of a trim. The actual size of the leaf I don't have fully grown because I took it out of the ground recently. But the size of the leaf of this tree is about that big.
So double or triple
size.
or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously bonsai is shrinking the leaves.
Yep.
So there are many ways of getting bonsai. You could start it by seed and then grow them out. You could actually have a tree that is already growing.
Natural bonsai, as they say sometimes.
Yes, it's already growing, and then you see the trunk is very how can I say characteristic.
Yeah, there's an aesthetic to the trunk that gives it that kind of desire.
You look at it, and then if you see, okay, that's the right one, then you can uproot that tree, reduce the main roots. So you usually trees will have about 3 main roots. You want to at least keep one at the beginning, the biggest one. It looks kind of like a it looks like the trunk, but like and then keep as many fine roots as possible, and you pot that.
Okay. Yeah. And this you've then started with a piece that has already been growing for quite a while. It looks.
So
like.
actually, so this was actually an aerial root of the
fibrous
tree. Yes.
Okay.
So it was from the branch that is sideways, and then they have the
that kind of stilt root to keep it upright, the branch upright.
Exactly. So the entire root is what I actually just chopped off, and because it's already a root, you don't have to root it.
Yeah.
Once you put it in,
will do itself.
It will already grow.
Well, I can see actually roots
coming
even
out.
sprouting from here. These little red.
Right.
Almost like red fibers coming out of it.
During the rainy season, because of the extra humidity, you get all these roots coming out, and that's what kind of keeps on adding towards your structure. You can actually even use these roots. They're still too fine to play with, but when they're a bit thicker, you can actually.
Oh yeah, you could essentially like do them with wire as you're doing the stems too, isn't it? So you could create a corkscrew root down to it if you wanted.
You could turn them into branches as well. You could push them back into the stem as well. You could rip them out as well if you don't want more. So this is in bonsai as well. You have different shapes of the tree as well. You can get cascading trees. You could get the tree, the original trunk tree. You have the root of a rock as well.
So here you're saying that you have to kind of prune things back. And what are you looking for when you are doing this kind of shaping now that you would?
Yeah. So the idea is we should never have something that is thick at the end and thin. It should be the other way around. So you have to have thick and then thin. Okay, that's one thing. So even when looking at the structure, you wouldn't want to have 2 branches coming out from the same place. Yeah. Right. It will make the tree. It will give you rather than this look. You're going to have that instead. Yeah. So your energies kind of have to go from thick to thin on each branch. Okay. From thick to thin on each branch. You don't want to have 2 branches next to each other going that way, because then that energy will be like that, and then. Rather than So that's one thing that you need to look at. Another thing you need to look at is there should be none of these in the front, because bonsai is mainly the trunk and then the branches. Yeah. So you want to have a visual of all of that. So my teacher Nelly used to tell me that it's called the poke you in the eye branch. Anything that grows this way is poking you in your eye. Yeah. In other words, it's ruining your visual. So get rid of anything that is going this way. Yeah, going in other words, poking you in the eye.
In that sense, are you looking at it from only one plane,
Yes,
or so it is that
so
kind of?
Yeah, so you can actually have, there are certain bonsais that you can view from different angles.
Yeah.
But mostly bonsai,
Are
the easiest
meant,
way would be,
okay.
the easiest way, most common way is to be viewed from one area.
So in that kind of artistic way, you'd have a perspective.
Yes.
In the same way that you would with a conventional canvas or
Yes,
something. Okay.
yes, right. Yeah, so at this point, because it's already branched out quite a lot, so the idea is you could have, with this specific tree here, because the branches are soft when they're young and they're bendable, you can use wire to kind of bend your branches, right? The other way of bending branches, because you want character in your branches, anytime a tree or a young tree gives off a branch, it will be very straight.
Yeah.
Obviously, that is not what we want to mimic. We want to mimic an older tree. We want to mimic that, the curves and all the...
Yep, the gnarliness to it.
Yes, so what we do is we let kind of like this, for example, we'll let it grow out.
Yeah.
Right? And then once it starts browning out like this, right? Then we'll give it like a trim maybe somewhere. Well, this one actually has to go completely. But I'll give you this as an example. So I'd leave this and I'll cut it somewhere. Yeah. Right. Sorry. The next one that's going to grow is not going to grow straight. It's going to grow a different angle.
Yeah.
So now you're kind of creating that bend.
So you're giving that knobbliness to it as you're pruning. Okay.
So in other words, all those bends, all of these little tiny bends are all from each
And
cut.
we can actually almost see that here.
Yes.
Where you've had that cut and now it's coming out.
So this was one cut, that's another cut.
Yeah.
Right? And then I did the
and then the one over this side here then as well.
Exactly.
And it's shooting back towards the original point.
So the new shoots would be a little bit bent compared to having that straight. So you'll be giving that, the curvature of all the little branches in a fully grown tree. So that's the idea of getting that.
And at the same time then allowing the actual branch to thicken.
Yes.
And give it that kind of more aged look.
Yes. Yeah. So that's pretty much bonsai in a nutshell. There's so much you can, so much more information to add to bonsai. Like for example, the roots as well. How to play with them. You put maybe a straw. So you put your straw all the way in, and then the root would follow.
Oh, literally, it follows it down, and then you can cut the straw out.
And then so you pretty much control. The idea is pretty much design your tree. Find ways to design your tree. There are already ways. Obviously, people have already found those ways, but there must be so many ways to kind of play around with them.
Well, and each specimen will be different.
Yes, yes.
2 600-year-old specimens are not going to be the exact same.
I've actually seen some bonsai masters who would have actually tie their branch, to something so that it stays that way until it,
Yeah. And once it's set then they can.
And then they release it because they don't want it to be,
Yeah, no, I've seen that where they'll have it tied underneath so it pulls it down especially too. Where if you're going for that.
So there's many different techniques, I guess, to how you design your tree.
Yeah.
But pretty much that's what it is. You're designing a tree, but like in a pot.
Now I know that bonsai kind of started more as a temperate, in temperate zones. Let me say that. What are the challenges in terms of doing bonsai more in a tropical, subtropical area like in Zambia, where we don't have a full year growing season, but if you give ficus water most of the year, they will continue to grow effectively.
I think if anything, it's even better. I personally prefer using our local trees here because obviously they're easier to grow because this is the environment. Specifically ficus, and we do have a lot of ficus.
We have quite a few,
in Zambia. Yeah, so not many challenges. I think if anything, because we do have two possible times where it can grow. So the moment winter kind of ends and the heat season comes in, the moment you start watering it, then we pretty much water it throughout the year, but slightly. But if you water it, then you'll have one growth. Yeah. And then just before the rain start again, you'd have another growth. Yeah. And they're right next to each other, so you can do 2 cuttings at once. Because obviously, you only cut them once they grow. Yeah. Right. So you do one cut, like after the first growth, and then another cut towards the end of the rainy season. Yeah. So having that is, I don't know how many times people.
When it happens, okay, but I guess if you are watering it towards the end of the rainy season. It's fine because it will continue to have another flush out. But if you were trying to live more within the spectrum of the climate, would it be best to cut it at the end of the rainy season? Because then if it thinks, okay, let me regrow following that, but you're not watering it, would that potentially set it back?
So it depends. So in other words, in terms of watering it, then you'd kind of just be storing it. So the idea is that to cut it off before it starts getting the leaves big
Yeah.
again. Yeah. So after that growth, you'd have to
Yeah.
have a tree. Maybe you could do it a little bit before the rainy season ends,
Mhm.
so you still have a bit of time for it to kind of settle before you stop,
Yeah.
slow down the watering. But yeah, during the winter season, you'd pretty much really minimalize your watering,
Yeah.
because obviously the growth is quite. You don't want to lose
Yeah.
your tree.
Yeah.
I mean, years of
Yeah,
Yeah,
years of work down the
and then
drain if it
yeah,
rots all of a
just
sudden.
one small mistake.
Now, would you treat this in the same way that you would, say, with baobab? Or do
in
you
terms
give
of the,
baobab a defined rest?
okay, so I'm not exactly sure, because I have one baobab and my mom has two. My
Okay.
mom did the baobab lesson with Nelly. I didn't.
Oh,
So
okay.
she keeps telling me that I'm supposed to keep it at rest. But I've just pretty much let mine be,
Yeah.
and it's doing its growth perfectly fine so
Yeah.
far. So I'm not so sure exactly. I only have I would say 3 that I'm experimenting on. So
Yeah.
my main is the ficus.
Yeah.
That's one of the
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
think it is definitely a favorite when it comes to that because of the
bonsai.
thing. But I do see back here,
Yeah.
you've got the monkey bread.
Yes.
Is
well,
that-
no,
is
no,
that
not,
a-
not monkey bread? That is the not leopard orchid, the orchid tree, but not the
Oh,
fancy one.
oh,
But
okay.
yes, the
So it is
monkey bread.
Bohinia. So that is the exotic one,
Yes.
or is this our indigenous
indigenous? This is the
with a
light
white-
purple.
light purple?
Very,
No,
very, light,
I-
very small flowers.
We do have indigenous ones, but they'll never get that big.
No, then
They're Western province usually, and they're shrubs more or less. The other
okay.
types that we have and stuff like that.
no,
Okay,
that's-
so that is Bohinia. Well, okay.
yeah.
Paleostigma used to be Bohinia, but now it's been
Yeah.
different. And you've just, is that
So
a
so
root?
so pretty much that's the first step.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that would be the first step. That would be the step of just getting your
Sorry.
bonsai from the ground. So what we
Behind
do
that.
is we plant our trees in a sack, and then we bury them into the ground
Yeah.
so that the roots are contained. And then once we get the size that we want,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the size could be as small as that. I have a bonsai which is even tinier than that. Depending on the size of the trunk that you want, depending on the
Mhm.
size of the bonsai you want, you'd pull it out according to that time. Then you chop off the
Okay.
main roots, start potting it, and yeah, from there, that would be.
Then the
its-
torture begins.
Yeah.
Right?
So at this point, I'm kind of removing whatever's big, like the big
Mm.
leaves, and then I'm also picking which branches would stay and which ones wouldn't. So let's look at this one here. This is a very awkward branch. So the back I usually don't pay much attention to, because obviously you don't see it. That's why it's usually very bushy.
It's all about front of shop.
Yeah, that's the main. Right, if you can look here, there's 2 here. You see how these 2 are both coming out from the same branch. So
Mhm.
that would be a problem. So you see, this is the actual one which I'm working with. This is a new one here.
Mm.
So we're gonna get rid of this one completely. Okay, because they're kind of coming out from the same.
Even like here.
No, so
Isn't it?
so this is pretty much main branch is this. right?
Okay.
So that one stays, right? And then we look 1, 2, 3. What you don't want is from your main branch. What you don't want is 2 from the same spot.
Mhm,
So
okay.
from this main branch over here, we had 2 sticking out
Yeah.
from one area. So you want the energy to flow that way.
Okay.
Just yeah. Yeah, so then hopefully the next one will grow from here
Mhm.
with a bit of a bend as well. It will keep kind of forming a fork. This is a complete extra new one. It's not supposed to be here.
So how many years old is this?
This could be 7 years. I need to check. Should be 7.
Okay.
No, more than 7. I think. So you see this branch over here, right?
Yeah.
It was actually something I had kept like a while back, but I've seen that a new one is coming here, and I prefer this one
Yeah, so it's not carrying along the
Yes,
same line
yeah,
as this one.
Because
underneath.
that's another thing as well. You don't want your branches to be in front of each other.
Mhm.
Yeah. And usually when you cut your bonsai, the day you cut it, it looks really weird.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
looks really
yeah.
weird. And then you give it like a week to give out the new growth, and then
Yeah.
you see that okay. My mom always gets scared when I'm cutting a bonsai because
Is the barber going to
It's-
take off too much in the end? Eh?
yes. See, all of these are kind of facing forward, so
Mhm.
we want to get rid of them. So this one here, I didn't want to get rid of it. So what I've been doing is I've been cutting it until I get something that's kind of pushing this way.
Mm, okay.
And now finally we have something that is.
Yeah.
So instead I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to get rid of that. And now hopefully it should
Yeah.
give us that way. Yeah. And then, so that's our main stem. Branch 1, branch 2, branch 3, and going that way. So we're following this stem here. Alright, so we'll leave this one. And here there's 2 shoots coming out. There's actually 3. So there's too much in one area. So I'll have to. And then, yeah, we could keep this one. Let's keep it somewhere here. Actually, we'll leave this one because it's still very soft. Let it brown out a bit before we cut it. Right, this one is all done.
Yeah, it's looking rather busy on this side.
This is also, yeah, I'm getting rid of the big leaves to have your. So even if you don't get rid of the branch, just remove the big leaves if you want the quick look of the bonsai. Yeah, I think this is all fine just the way it is. Maybe this one here could do for trim.
No, it's a lovely thing about a living canvas is that it will regrow.
Yeah, it will.
You don't have to worry about that is going to be the end. Yeah.
Just don't kill it. That's it.
That's gardening in a nutshell, isn't it?
All these here, see, this is all one. Oh, another thing you could do. So, for example, all these little tiny branches here.
Yeah.
The ficus is a tree that kind of, once it touches each other, it can.
It can naturally graft.
Right. So you could actually. I've done this on another one. I'll show you.
We'll start braiding them.
Where you can just, or even this is still too young.
Yeah.
You'd have them like these sizes here.
Yeah.
And if they were growing together, you just kind of tie them together, and you could use a wire, you could use tape, you could use whatever. Just a few, maybe 3-4 months, and they'll be combined.
Yeah.
And then you can take them out.
Yeah, because you can actually find natural grafting of ficus in, especially between branches and roots. As the root comes down, it touches the branch, it roots in.
Because they literally open up once they combine. They pretty much open up their cells again, and kind of crazy. It's like a power tree. This is. You could come maybe this way. You can do this side.
It is quite the haircut after a while, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mind you, I do the same on my baobabs. I'll just cut it right back.
Yeah.
And then just let it, start to reshoot.
Leave that for now. Actually.
I'm going to put this one right down here.
That is going that way. A lot of the times the shoots would come from where the petiole meets the stem. So one of the best things would be like, okay, if I want the branch to go in that direction, so I'll cut it over the leaf where.
Passion fruit.
I'll cut it over the leaf where that is facing in that direction.
Yeah.
So that hoping that the
it's
shoot
that
would be
specific
facing
bud
that
that breaks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that should be the trim. We could reduce these leaves instead of removing them completely. So it does.
Yeah, I suppose that is also the trick, is to get the
leaves young
amount of pruning that is going to work to get what you want without actually stressing the plant so much effectively.
Yeah. I think that's why ficus is one of the mainly used in bonsai, because they are strong for that compared to the other ones. Like I was mentioning earlier, stuff like bougainvillea. If you cut it, like let's say you want this branch here, right? This branch is not going to die back. But if it's bougainvillea, if I have to cut, if I want it here, I'm going to have to cut it somewhere here. Yeah. So you have to know the tree.
Bonsai bougainvillea in Zambia seems to be kind of a useless thing when we can grow it to such
big
high.
heights.
Yeah.
But they do very well for bonsai. They very, very well, because the leaves shrink very fast as well.
Oh, do they?
And because the growth is so fast, you can cut them even 3 times a year, so you'd have like something even faster. Yeah, so that's it is not yet a bonsai master would tell me that my trunk is very thin at the bottom and thick at the top, but I do plan to add another one going this way here, a whole another tree. So I'm from the tree which I've cut.
Oh, really? You're going to actually take another piece and put it in?
Yeah, because you can see what's happening is that it's thin and then it's going that way. Just the trunk. Forget this. Just the trunk. The trunk is thin at the top, and so when I planted it, most of the some of the aerial roots on the sides died. That's why it lost there. So I need to add a few more trees here to kind of just.
And presumably with these roots, so if you did train them to the ground, you could train them out further, get them rooted, and then give that a few years, and then that would thicken it.
Yeah. So even like, for example, if this one would actually be very perfect actually. So I'd put a straw facing that way. Yeah. And then I'd have that ready. On this side there's no root, so I'd have to put either a hole, just to get that, that V shape there.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of work.
So this root of a rock bonsai, how we grow this, we pick our rock. It should be something that is very groovy, something that has a lot of space for the roots to kind of hug. Right, and then what you do is you take your tree that is planted in whatever, whether it's in a packet or whatever, and you uproot it and let the roots be bare. And then what you do is you take the tree, place it at the top, let your roots fall onto the rock, and then kind of push them in towards the grooves. This one wasn't done very well, unfortunately, but it still kind of came out nice. Yeah, but you push them into the grooves, right? And then you take styrofoam and you put the styrofoam on the root.
Oh, and you then tie
and then you tie it, because if you tie directly, the string or whatever wire you're using would kind of sooner or later might slice the root. Yeah, so you put the styrofoam and then you tie it. And once you have that done, you tie it. You should have roots that are kind of also hanging off the rock as well, because those are going to go under and then into the actual soil, right? Once you plant that, then you put a plastic around it as well, and you fill that up with soil. You could use a pot, maybe cut a pot in half and then kind of like a collar, and then put your soil inside and water that. So yeah, maybe a year or 2 years after, depending on how, then you'd take out that plastic and then you'd wash off whatever soil is there, and then you'd get that. And now the roots are actually the ones that are in the pot, and this root becomes a stem. Yeah. So it's called root of a rock. It's also a type of bonsai technique. Yep.
And then as it goes on, like I see other roots developing that are then actually really like this hugging little one here following in the crevices of the root, of the rock, sorry.
And this is done not with just any tree. It has to be specific trees, especially trees that the roots are quite strong. So people have tried with tamarind. Like tamarind is a very good bonsai tree, but in tamarind the roots are very very weak. So they wouldn't be able to hug, and as well as exposing them might even kill the tree is a possibility.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's a lovely feature, but I guess this is quite a bit more work, even in just setting up the start of the bonsai than the other.
I think like with bonsai compared to the other plants, it's a lot of work in the sense of getting what you want. Yeah. But in the actual work that you're putting in, you probably touch it twice a year. In terms of trimming it. So like with my mom and I would have like twice a year where we'd have, okay, this is bonsai week, so we'll do all the cutting and we'll do all the trimming. Like I showed you there, we had started, but then my mom left, so now we still have the other half still have to do. So we do it twice a year, sometimes even once a year. But we just have that moment, okay, it's bonsai. Then the rest of the year, it's the gardener who has to water it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Maybe
I do imagine that if you are going into bonsai, be ready for as many failures as successes.
At the end of the day, in terms of gardening, you have to know you're going to lose a lot of, you're going to kill a lot of plants. There's nobody who's going to, have the magical fingers and just not kill anything. So.